I had spent more than 50 years of my life developing my conventional worldview as an academic neurosurgeon, had come to fully believe that the physical world is all that exists and that the brain creates consciousness out of physical matter. And then I had a profound near-death experience. It all started by going deep into coma within about 3.5 hours due to a severe gram-negative bacterial meningitis. And I spent 7 days in coma. My doctors acknowledged that I had about a 10% chance of survival early in the week. By the end of that week, I was down to a 2% chance of survival with no chance of recovery. And it was hours later, after they recommended stopping the antibiotics, that I came back to this world. And all I knew at that time was where I had been, because in fact, all of my memories of life before, all of my words, language, personal knowledge of Eben Alexander's life, all my religious beliefs, scientific knowledge had been deleted in the midst of coma. And all I knew was where I had just been, which was a fantastic odyssey. It had begun in what I call the earthworm eye view, a very primitive course unresponsive realm, but then led up through this slowly spinning pure white light with an associated musical melody up into a brilliant gateway valley, ultra real, far more real than this world. And in that world, of course, many kind of earth-like features, lots of plant life, everything blossoming and blooming, thousands of souls dancing below, beautiful girl on a butterfly wing, and reassurances that I was loved, that I would be taken care of, that I had nothing to fear. And yet that was only a part of the pathway, a milestone on the way out to all of space and time collapsing down, even deep time, a different ordering of causality for our souls collapsing down, ascending through angelic choirs up into the core, infinite inky blackness, but filled to overflowing with that abundant love, unconditional love of the Creator for the creation, that God or deity. And there I associated that God with the sound Om. That's what I brought back to this world. And in my early writings about it, I even called that deity Om, because to me, the word God was a puny little human word with a lot of baggage that had nothing to do with the astonishing power, awe, majesty, and infinite love of that deity at the core that is one with all of us. So this was a very instructional journey as I came back to this world. Words and language came back over hours and days, childhood memories over weeks. All of my semantic knowledge of physics, chemistry, neuroscience, cosmology returned over about 8 weeks or so. But I was left with this tremendous mystery of trying to figure all this out. I'd never read the near-death experience literature before, but now I dove in full speed ahead and realized that the similarities far outweigh the differences. And that is a very crucial feature. And in fact, the revelations that come from NDEs transcend one's prior beliefs. Even though the prior beliefs, religious beliefs, etc., can be used to flavor in the telling of the story, but often you have great revelations which challenge those dogmatic belief systems. And that is where I believe NDEs bring tremendous value to this world, because they really are a force of unification and of bringing us all together and realizing that we are all actually different facets of one mind, and that binding together of our minds and our experiences is all through the power of love, unconditional love, compassion, mercy. These are what NDEs bring to this world, and the world is certainly due for this kind of lesson, even though it's an ancient lesson indeed. As an active neurosurgeon, the thing that was most perplexing about my illness, given that my doctors assured me that based on my neurologic exams, on the CT and MRI scans, on the laboratory values, that I had a very lethal bacterial meningitis involving all 8 lobes of my brain, I should have experienced nothing at all, according to our conventional neuroscience. And yet the paradox is that as my neocortex, the outer surface of the brain, the part that makes us human, as that was being devastated by this bacterial infection, in fact, my conscious awareness was growing tremendously. It's like being freed from the shackles of a prison. And that kind of expansion of conscious awareness completely defies anything that our modern neuroscience would try and postulate about the nature of consciousness itself. So I began to realize in the months after my coma that I had a tremendous amount to explain, because in fact there were time anchors in my memories that proved that in fact the vast majority of the coma journey of my NDE had to happen between days 1 and 5 of my coma. And that was all, that whole interval of time, my doctors had plenty of evidence that my neocortex was not working. And therefore I had a lot of explaining to do. And that was the beginning of what has now been almost a 9-year journey of deeper understanding, investigating deeply into consciousness, developing a pattern of meditation. I try to meditate daily. I've worked with a group called Sacred Acoustics to try and come up with tools that help people get into very deep transcendental conscious states. And this is all about returning into consciousness, exploring consciousness, because what you begin to realize is the modern scientific model that replaces the old production model. That would be that the brain produces consciousness out of physical matter. And no one has ever gone anywhere with that model. It's hopelessly lost. People who support that model can't even give you the next sentence of how the physical brain might create consciousness. And yet the scientific model that is replacing it is very powerful. And that is what is known as filter theory. It looks at the brain as a reducing valve or filter. An analogy might be you can study everything you want about the brain, and that would be like studying the display on your computer monitor. And yes, it's important to understand how that display works, but don't think that understanding all the workings of that physical display is going to explain what appears on the screen. You have to go much deeper. The physical realm is the display, but the much deeper is the realm of consciousness and mind. In fact, quantum physicists have been trying to tell us for 100 years that consciousness is fundamental in the universe. That's what Werner Heisenberg and Paul Dirac, Louis de Broglie, even Einstein, although he was kind of dragged kicking and screaming to the grave at the end with his failure to see the reality of entanglement and spooky action at a distance. But they all realized that you had to put consciousness as fundamental. And that, of course, is a very tough pill for the materialist scientific world to swallow. And there you have to look at the 400-year rise of the scientific revolution and realize that back in the days of Galileo and Francis Bacon, Giordano Bruno, Isaac Newton, that if they tread anywhere close to the world of mind and consciousness, they were likely to be burned at the stake, as Bruno indeed was, by the church. Because that was their territory, and they wanted anyone studying natural sciences to stick to the material world and the laws that govern it. And then, of course, with quantum physics, what we end up realizing is you cannot separate mind from what is being observed. In fact, mind appears to be fundamental. And the most robust philosophical position supporting that idea is one known as metaphysical or ontological idealism. And in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, which is out in October of 2017, we explore that possibility very exuberantly because that is actually where things go. And we have to realize that no human being has ever witnessed anything other than the inside of their own consciousness. It's something that my co-author Karen Newell and I call the supreme illusion. And that is that everything that is out there in the world, when I have people and have other, the trees, the birds, the sky, the beautiful stars and galaxies in the night sky, all of that, our brain and mind convince us we're witnessing the out there, but what we actually experience is an internal construct. And I cannot stress enough the importance of realizing the power and seduction of that supreme illusion. And to actually get deeper to truth, we have to kind of go through that illusion. And this is part of why meditation is so important, going into consciousness. And really, you cannot think your way to knowing this. You cannot just read the books and just watch the DVDs and just go to the meetings. The only way to actually get it is to go within. And that, of course, is why Karen Newell and I often give these play shops, as we call them, using sacred acoustics tones. The power of differential frequency sound to liberate conscious awareness from the illusion of the here and now is very powerful. And this is the exploration that I've been on now for 9 years since my coma. Very important to point out that this is a revolution. My own experience in awakening parallels exactly what is going on in the world of neuroscience and philosophy of mind, and coming to a deeper answer about the mind-body question. And in fact, all the answers around issues of afterlife, reincarnation, every bit of that depends on how this mind-body question is resolved over time. And the evidence emerging now, as I said, is very strongly that consciousness is fundamental in the universe, which completely opens the door to the afterlife and to reincarnation. It's crucial to point out that the orthodox teaching that I grew up with, and that many people in this country and around the world have grown up with, of one incarnation, then eternal heaven or hell, is absolutely nonsense in the setting of NDEs and a lot of what we bring back to this world, and the evolving understanding of the nature of consciousness. And when you see that consciousness is primordial, that in fact it's best to look at all of sentient life, not just humans, not just life on Earth, but all of sentient life throughout the cosmos as participating in this beautiful journey together, but all as one mind doing the evolution. I think a beautiful example of this is the life review that you often encounter in 30 to 50% of near-death experiences. And in the life review, important to point out that we experience the impact of our actions and thoughts on others, not from our point of view, but from theirs. And so the life review is a perfect demonstration that the boundaries of self in many ways are artificial. They're there as a construct. And that's what allows for this beautiful dance of being in these bodies, living these lives with the full emotional power of what we go through. We're all here in soul school to learn and to teach. But this is kind of like the higher, the oversoul, the one mind is doing the growing through this experience, through the multiple beings and entities, and this includes all life. All animal and plant life is involved in this. It's not uniquely human at all. Although, of course, our human brain and mind offers a different kind of perspective and a way to discuss it. But it would be very misleading to think that animals and plant life are not involved in this beautiful dance of the one mind, doing its dreaming as it is learning and growing. This is all about the evolution of consciousness that occurs through that process. And we're coming to realize that one mind is a very important notion. And of course, that's been there in religious teachings going back millennia. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Most fundamental principle, and that's exactly what this one mind is all about. If I hurt another being, I'm hurting myself. And NDEs teach that in a very beautiful way. And this is really about recovering some ancient lessons. It's not like this is big news, even though the consolidation of science and spirituality is absolutely earth-shattering news, because it's leading to a revolution in human thinking that is unprecedented, and that I believe will make the Copernican revolution, where we move from thinking of the earth as the center of the universe to the sun, look like child's play. A tremendous awakening for humanity is upon us even now.